Let's talk a little bit about why our NHS, the National Health Service, has so many problems in the UK. I worked as a doctor for 3 years, and some of you might know I used to be a medical doctor, and I worked in orthopedic surgery for the National Health Service, and it was quite disheartening and disappointing, so I left. I changed my career to do something that was nothing to do with stress, but more fulfilling, because I went into medicine thinking I was going to help people, and when you're in your 20s you want to change the world, and then you end up amongst all these people who are just there for the money. So it was very disappointing, to say the least. Also, at the time, there were no EU directives to prevent people from working, 110 hours a week. So I was working a lot and I didn't have much time for myself. Plus I loved business and technology and other things, so I changed my career. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of abuse from doctors especially. I have so many friends who are doctors as well about this video, but this is my personal experience, and as far as I'm concerned, this is the truth. This is my version of the truth that I see. The National Health Service is very good. I have to say that if I had a choice between private or National Health Service in the UK, I would choose National Health Service, because it's not driven for profit, and people who do the work there, especially the nurses and all the staff, they're really lovely. Not saying the ones in the private sector aren't, but in the NHS they definitely are better. Also, all the doctors are the same and more. The only problem that is very prevalent in the National Health Service is the way it's administered. It's the way everything is set up. The government doesn't really care. It just keeps taking our money and putting it into the National Health Service with this excuse that, oh, if you don't pay X, Y, Z, your health service will suffer, instead of improving and refining the National Health Service. So let's start off with a few things. First of all, my biggest gripe is that the nurses are the most hard-working individuals in any hospital, but they are very, very poorly paid in the National Health Service. Most of the permanent nurses quit their jobs and go through temping agencies because that's the only way they can make ends meet and be able to live and afford a life in a city like London, for example, or any other big city. But then you have these consultants who, I don't know now, but I think back in the day they used to get between 80 and 120,000 pounds a year from the government, from the National Health Service, NHS. But they don't necessarily work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for the NHS. Because if you go around the UK and you look at all the private practices, they're open during the week and they have consultants working there who are also working at the NHS hospitals. So basically they're getting paid by the government to perform a duty in a government hospital, yet they are going away and doing the work in their private practice, and they're taking the money from the government and from their private practice. I used to work for a consultant who used to make £3.5 million a year from his private practice. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. And he would come in twice a week for 4 hours a day, and that's all he did for the NHS. And the rest of the time he spent at his private practice. And that was just one example. There's so many of them. I'm not saying all of them are like that, but there are a huge number of people who are like that. So the registrars, the senior house officers, the other junior doctors around the hospital end up doing a lot of the work for these consultants who come in for a few hours a day just to check in, run their outpatient clinic, there were so many times when I heard the consultant saying, well, we have a very long waiting list, and as you can tell by the name of this person or their clothes or whatever they're wearing, tell them that they can come to my private clinic. And it's just ridiculous because the government hospital waiting lists are so long because the consultants are never there. They're working in their private practices, making money through insurance companies or other people who can pay them. There's a huge number of people who come from the Middle East for treatments. It's called medical tourism, which is all fine. I'm not against any of that. The only thing is, don't work for the NHS if you're going to work for your private practice in the time that is being paid by the government. So the government should put in some policies that would prevent doctors from working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in their private clinics. If they want to do it, they should do it out of hours or do it on a weekend or quit the job, because you don't really need to work for the NHS. You're making millions from your private practice anyway. A lot of them do it because they can get referrals from there to their private clinics. There's a whole industry of making connections and contacts with the GPs that goes on. So many of these consultants have parties and events that they host and invite all the GPs who can then send them referrals. So it's just a whole scam that's going on in the name of healthcare and helping people. So when I worked there as a young adult, I was very disheartened and disappointed, thinking that I'm amongst these vultures who are there to make money and they're really greedy. I'm not saying it's all of them, but the ones that I met, there were quite enough of them to make me want to leave. If you want to make money, there are plenty of other ways of doing it, and I'm not rich or anything, but I'm not struggling either. I think my life wouldn't have been any different if I worked for the NHS or as a doctor. Maybe I would have earned more money, but perhaps I wouldn't be so happy, and perhaps my conscience wouldn't be clear. At the moment, I know that I don't do anything dodgy. I'm not taking advantage of anyone's misery and making money out of it. So, going back to the NHS, the government can implement so many things. For example, the system, the way it's structured, the administration of the hospitals, they are managers on top of managers. Where I worked at St. Mary's in Paddington at one point, I worked at Hammersmith Hospital at one point, and Whittington Hospital at another point. There were so many managers. There were 2 staff and 3 managers managing them. Everyone wants to have a manager title because they think they're going to get a promotion or they're going to get more money. The point is, if people want to get more money, they should ask for more money, and our system shouldn't be designed that you need a promotion in order to get better salary. After X number of years, you should be awarded more money irrespective of your job title. And that way people will be happy doing the job that they want to do, rather than trying to get a job that they think will pay them better even though they don't like it. So it is the same in most of the industries around the UK. For example, people in the banking industry where I work have titles like VP, Vice President. That's an entry-level job, but it's a Vice President, so the person getting the job feels like, oh, I'm so important. But then you have a director, a senior director, a managing director. A managing director, there should be only one in a company because that's the MD, the CEO of the company. But no, in the banking industry, every Tom, Dick and Harry is an MD, because that's the promotion level where you get X amount of money. Now, I think that titles should be abolished as much as possible, and people should be rewarded and recognized for their work rather than what their job title is. Similarly, you have chief operating officers in the banking industry. Every department has a COO. Really? There is only one chief operating officer. The word chief means chief, who is in charge of everything. You can have departmental operating officers, but they're not called that. In fact, that's what they are. They're actually business managers. Same thing goes for the NHS. Everyone has a title. Everyone wants to be a manager. Everyone wants to be senior, not doing anything. So we have so many people working in that industry who don't do anything and get paid. Then you have so much negligence, and because of the shortage of staff, and that's created by the low salaries and the bad management. If you pay the nurses well, they wouldn't quit their jobs and go work as locum or temping staff. So you wouldn't have to create a department that manages the hiring of these people. They would just be full-time employees being managed by the hospital. But instead you have a department within the NHS that then goes out and hires people to come and work as temporary staff and pays them a lot more. Same thing happens for doctors. When I was a junior doctor, I hardly ever worked as a temping, what's called a locum doctor. And it's because I just didn't think it was appropriate. But at one point, when I was in between jobs, I registered with this agency and they rang me one weekend when I was supposed to go away to somewhere, I think, and said, we need a doctor urgently and we have you on the list and it seems like you're available. I said, yes I am, but this weekend I'm not. And they said, we'll pay you X amount. And I said, I'm really sorry, you'll have to find someone else. 2 hours later they rang me again saying, okay, we'll double what we were paying you, but we need you. And because I was young and I needed the money, I accepted it. But also I found out later on that this is normal practice. A lot of these doctors, they will turn down a job in the hope that they'll get more money. And that's what happens. They'll keep calling a few people. If they're really desperate, they will pay more. And that money is coming from the NHS. And it's ridiculous. If you pay those people properly in the first place, they wouldn't quit the job and go and come back to work as temps. So the trouble is that a lot of these managers who are managing these hospitals don't want someone like me to come in and fix it, because I will probably fire half of them. They're the ones who are making these decisions. So they would never hire a management consultant to come in and fix these issues. But private sector, yes, I'm hired by companies to come and improve how they perform, create efficiencies. And sometimes it's not about firing people. Sometimes it's just about finding the right business processes, doing some automation, and freeing up the time of those people to do the actual stuff that's required. Because a lot of the times people are doing the wrong things and wasting their time when it could be used to do something better. So anyway, back to the National Health Service. I think this can all be fixed by hiring the right people to come and review the patient care pathway, start to finish, working out what are the steps that need to happen, how can you improve it, who needs to be there, whose task is what, how much is the private sector or the industry paying for someone like that. Compared to that, okay, benefits, job continuity, security, pensions, insurances, all of that, take into account the whole compensation benefit package, and then offer them good jobs. You'll need less people and you'll run a more efficient organization instead of constantly pumping money into it. If every time there's a new budget, the government threatens the population saying, oh, the NHS will suffer, therefore you need to do X, Y, Z, because if you don't, you're not going to get health care. And people are scared and they give money, and that money just hemorrhages out at the other end because it's inefficiently, badly managed. And consultants are gods. The registrars and junior doctors can't question them because their futures and careers rely on them. A consultant is eventually going to pass or fail you in your future postgraduate exams. They're going to help you climb the ladder within the medical field. So even though the junior doctors see all of this, and even if they want to change it, they can't. The administrators, on the other hand, I don't know why they don't do it. Maybe they're corrupt, maybe they get money backhanders, who knows. I didn't stay there long enough to find out. So yeah, this is like my little view, the insight into the NHS and why it's broken. And if someone from the NHS or the government is watching this and you want to change it, hire someone like me. I'm an ex-doctor. I know how this should work. I know what departments are involved. I have integrated and built hospitals. So someone like me can do it, but I never get a single call from anyone asking me to go and do some process refinement or transformation of a hospital. I get calls from headhunters for changing private organizations. Never for, I mean, my CV says I'm an ex-doctor, but no one wants that because they want that to continue doing what it's doing. Don't change it. The number of penalties that the NHS pays because of negligence, why is it happening? Why is it that it can't be refined and fixed? It can be. They just don't want to do it. And it's very unfortunate. But here we are. Thanks for watching, as always, one of my rant videos.